Awesome. So we talked about design and how we can apply that in web design, the principles of proximity, alignment, repetition, and contrast, and then how those apply in web design. But now let's talk about typography. So typography is one of the elements that you want to include in your next project. It's one of the requirements, and you have to disclose what are going to be the different fonts that you're going to be using in your application. Fonts are extremely important, and the different font families can change completely the way that your website looks like this basic example here that you can get from Reddit, that it's kind of like a joke that has been going around and around forever. It says that it's not the same thing to just write like, you will always be mine, versus saying, you will always be mine. And then the different fonts that you use can convey that type of idea, okay? And it's just a matter of changing same colors, same layout, just changing the font. So it is very important that you try to choose a font that helps you find like good readability, good legibility, that gives you good visual hierarchy and emphasize the correct parts of your application. So by doing that, you can also set the mode of your page and then decide what are the elements that you're going to be including in there. Now, for these, there are multiple font families that you can use, but the most common ones that you're going to see are the sans serif, which are fonts that are a little bit lighter and a little bit more casual. You can use these type of fonts for websites or applications that are not that formal, or where you want something that is a bit more modern. The whole idea with the serif is that the serif is this little element that you have here on the top of the S, and also, for instance, here on the F. Those little embellishments that you see in there is what makes it like a serif. And then sans serif is French for without the serif. So the serif fonts are the ones that you use whenever you want something that is more classical, that it has a little bit more of like classical style, or that it's trying to convey like a little bit more formalism. Like, for instance, the typical one for this is like newspapers and things like that, or something that it's more official. So whenever you use serifs like that, it looks more distinguished. And the interesting thing about design and even typography, it's a very good example of that. It's that it can be a little bit hard for us as engineers, in the sense that they don't talk about things that are more quantifiable. They talk more about things that are more about feelings and things like that. So if you take a look at the required readings for fonts that I gave you for the class, you can see that there are whole courses that can teach you the basics of this and try to understand what could be some fonts for that. And if all of that seems too confusing, then just try to see which websites have interesting fonts, or like which websites inspire you or applications inspire you, and look at the type of fonts that they have in the combination. So apart from the sans serif and the serif, there are all like the third one, which is a little bit less used, and it's a little bit more risky, but also gives you the flexibility to try to say, this is like very handwriting, it's like more hyper personal, or it's like about stories, about games, or these fabulous worlds or elements like that, depending on which one you choose. These are different cursive fonts. They're a little bit harder to understand, so make sure that maybe don't abuse something like that for the whole website, but it could be useful for maybe for the landing page or for headers, or just to give the idea that this site has that more romantic side of it. And then the other one that is very common, and it's kind of like a very computer scientist, is the monospace fonts. So the monospace fonts, as the name implies, like all of the different letters that you have are going to have exactly the same font. So for instance, if you see here in the sans serif, the I has less space and less width than the S. When you write that in monospace, regardless of what letter you're writing in there, all of the letters are going to have the same space. So if you're showing, for instance, numbers, and you want to align them, so like in a table or something like that, using a monospace font can be very useful for that. Or if you want to convey something that is like a console or a terminal or a computer-based element, these type of things also tend to be very common. It's also coming like out of typewriters and things like that. There are other fonts families that you can use, and as usual, go and take a look at the Mozilla Developer Network, and then you can see some of the other font families that you can use, or how to combine all of these different elements and how to start using it on your web applications. Okay, so if you want to see like different basics of that, so take a look at the readings for the class. And then one of the things that you need to do for the project is that you have to choose a good typography matching. So before we get here, and then given that we were talking about the MDN, let me show you how you use fonts in your application. So let me open a new terminal in here, and then just get into my usual web scratch, and then I'm going to create another one in here, like that I call like fonts 2 or something. Perfect naming. I apologize. So I'm just going to open Visual Studio Code in there, and for that one I'm just going to create like a basic index HTML page. So as usual, just start this with a template, and I'm going to start like a little browser in here showing the results for this. Okay, so yes, I guess I can do this. So if actually, let me put it in here so we can make sure that it is always visible. So in this case, like for instance, I can go and say in here, hello world, and then just putting a simple document, and then like just adding some basic text or something like that. And then let's say that for instance, you have a new header, subtitle, and then let's see if Copilot wants to write something. This is a basic example, blah, blah, I want some text that looks like and even more, blah, blah, blah. So Copilot just decided to write a little bit, and then you can see that it's happening in here. Okay, so these are the default fonts. When you don't choose the default fonts, then the browser is just going to come with some defaults, and then just use those ones. The user actually can change those fonts and on their own user settings. So when you don't change anything, like everything is just going to go with those basic elements. Now, as with anything related with style, then you can change things just using CSS rules. So if I go and I create like a basic rule that says that my font family is going to be like a sans serif font, then now you can see that all of the fonts change for that because I'm applying a rule in general. Now, as I said, you can go and try like different font families in here. Like this, actually, I have never tried. Oh, that's interesting. So these are like a very basic family, but then you can even go, as you can see here, Copilot is suggesting something more specific, like saying a specific font, and then a font family. Out of this font family, which are the sans serif, we're using the Arial font. Okay. Now, let's say that you want to use something more good, perfect. So let's say that you want to use something more interesting. So for that, what you can do is that you can go to the website called Google Fonts. And Google Fonts, it's a place I loved because when I used to code websites like 20 years ago, and I started with this, it was very complicated if you wanted to have a website that had like a clean, beautiful fonts, because those fonts will usually be, you will need to purchase them, like you will need to make sure that the user can install them, and then Google help us, like the whole community, by creating Google Fonts. The whole idea is with Google Fonts, you can have a whole repository of fonts that you might want to use, and then help people try to use them in a more simplified way. So let's say, for instance, I want to choose a font from this one, and then let's say that maybe I want something that is sophisticated. Ooh, that's too sophisticated. Yeah, but let's see. That seems, oh, I kind of like this one. And then let's say I want to use this quintessential, and then you click here on get the font, and then you can click on get the code, and then basically you're going to have to do two things. The first one is that you're going to include this link, which are going to be loading the library per se. So first it is going to be loading Google Fonts, and then it defines exactly what is the font that you want to use. So we say that we're going to use quintessential, but then it seems like in here, yeah, it got it in here, and you can see there is the specific family for that. And then the whole idea is that wherever you want to use it, then you use space grotesque. So the quintessential will be this one in here. It seems like when you choose that one, it comes in 3 models, and then there you have it there. Now, usually, as you say, this is going to be just for one font. And what I was saying about the font pairing, or the font pairing is, or the typography matching, it's that, remember that we'd say that one of the principles was contrast. So the whole idea with typography matching is that you want to create contrast between your fonts. So your headers and the main content of your site actually have that enough contrast. So for that, there is this website that is called fontpair.co. And then in here, you can go and start exploring like many different categories of fonts that you could play with. And then let's say, for instance, if I come in here, I wonder if we can find, like, I went with a very weird one. So this might play against me. Quintessential. I don't want to even have to type it. But if I come in here and then let's say, yeah, quintessential was too weird. Oh, but I like this one. So if I go into this delicious hand-drawn, let me see. Interesting. No, I want the font pairings. So can I have? Oh, for handwriting, they don't have that. Okay, so let's go and say, like the most classical ones that you can do, it's combining a sans serif font with a serif font. So here, like for instance, these are the sans serif, and then you can see the combination in here. Whenever you see one that you like for instance, Chivo and Gambo, I kind of like this one. So let's go and see that one in there, comparing to the friends. So let's open that. And then this place I kind of like because you can see how it will be looking on your website. And you can even go and try some different color schemes just to see how it will look. Okay, now they do have here like a way of downloading that, but I forget, I think they don't have a way of copying the code. So basically we want the Chivo and Rasa fonts, so we can then hopefully go back here, and then I am going to remove all of those, and then come in here, and then just say I want the Chivo, I guess this one, and I want to get that font, and this is how to install it. And then Google Fonts used to have their own font pairings, but I am not seeing it in here. And by the way, you should go and take a look. Oh, they do have some Figma font pairings in here. They used to have that whenever you get into a font, it will tell you which fonts it will play nicely with. And I don't see here. Oh, that's interesting. This could be like one guide to show probably. Could be one for using in there. Okay, so now we have that one, and the other one that they are recommending here is Rasa. So I can come in here and then just look for Rasa, very Latin fonts. Oh my goodness. I wonder if it is this one. Let's give it a try. So we are going to get the embed code, and then we will be replacing these ones. And then for Chivo, we want this one. And so we select this one for that. And then the weight, we can say something like probably like 200 or something. And then for the H1, H2, H3, oh, look at that. They actually did it for Rasa. Opalo did it. Let's see if it copied all of it correctly. I like what it did. So, and then let's say this is going to be 300. And then when you do that, then now you can see the combination in here. And like, for instance, this one in here, we can say this is going to be like a little bit darker, and then you can combine that in there. Now, if you want to see how this compares to when you switch it, then you can also play with that. And then it seems actually, this one seems nicer for me. And then you have that strong combination in there. So for your project, you need to have this font pairing. So go and choose the different fonts. There is a lot of materials that you can read on the side of Google Fonts. And there is also this interesting font pairing thing that they keep on adding new elements that could help you create different combinations. And then finally, here on this website, if you want to go a little bit deeper, then you can find also other tutorials on how to combine fonts, and maybe choose one of those. But do not go with the default fonts. You have to select one that plays nicely with your website, and then disclose it very clearly in your project of what is the font that you're going to be using. Okay. Now, for the next part, what we're going to be talking about, it's actually about color.